Albert Camus, the man who made it his life's work to find meaning in a meaningless world. He was born in 1913 in Mondovi, a small town in French Algeria. His father died in World War I, and his mother raised him in poverty. Unable to read or write, Camus excelled in school and earned a scholarship to study philosophy at the University of Algiers. But his studies were interrupted by tuberculosis, a disease that would plague him for the rest of his life. From an early age, he was fascinated by the big questions of existence, and when he was just 24 years old, he came up with a philosophy that he called the absurd, the clash between our desire for meaning and the universe's silence. Instead of giving in to despair, Camus said we must accept this tension and live fully, creating meaning through our choices. He called it living in revolt. During World War II, he joined the French resistance and became editor of the underground newspaper Combat, fighting oppression with his pen. Through his novels like The Stranger and The Plague, he gave literary form to his philosophy. In 1957, at just 44, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for illuminating the problems of the human conscience in our time. Camus died tragically in a car accident in France in 1960, at the age of only 46, but his words continue to inspire us to find beauty, love, and courage in a world that often seems absurd. Albert Camus, a life cut short. Albert Camus was born in 1913 in Mondovi, a small town in French Algeria. His father died in World War I when Albert was just a baby, and his mother raised him in poverty. Life was tough. His mother struggled to make ends meet, and Albert grew up wanting for many things. But despite their difficult circumstances, young Albert was determined to make something of himself. He excelled in school, learning Latin and Greek, and soon his love of literature and philosophy bloomed. When he was 16, he won a scholarship to study philosophy at the University of Algiers. Though his studies were interrupted by tuberculosis, a disease that would plague him for most of his life, Camus never lost his passion for learning. In fact, it was during his time in the hospital recovering from a bout of TB that he began to develop the ideas that would make him famous. From an early age, Camus had been fascinated by the big questions of existence, wondering about the nature of reality, the purpose of life, and the problem of suffering. But now, faced with the reality of his own mortality, these questions became all the more pressing. What is the meaning of life? If there is no inherent meaning, then how should we live? And if death is the end, what is the value of anything? These questions led him to develop his philosophy, which he called the absurd. The absurd, according to Camus, is the fundamental clash between our innate desire for meaning and the universe's apparent silence. We yearn to understand our place in the cosmos and to find answers to life's most profound questions, but the universe doesn't seem to care. It offers no solace, no comfort, no answers. We are left on our own to grapple with these questions and to forge our own paths through life. Faced with this absurdity, Camus recognized that we have only two options: despair or revolt. To despair is to give in to the hopelessness of the situation and to give up on life. But Camus rejected this option. Revolt, on the other hand, is to acknowledge the absurdity of life and to embrace it. It is to recognize that we are free to create our own meaning and to forge our own paths through life, even in the face of a meaningless and indifferent universe. He expressed this idea in his 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, in which he tells the story of a man condemned to spend eternity pushing a boulder up a hill only to have it roll down every time he neared the top. Camus concluded that the only way to deal with this situation was to imagine Sisyphus happy. It may seem paradoxical, but for Camus this was the only way to overcome the absurd. By embracing the absurdity of our existence and choosing to live our lives to the fullest, we can find happiness and fulfillment even in a meaningless and indifferent universe. Camus didn't just write about these ideas, he put them into practice. During World War II, he joined the French resistance and became editor of the underground newspaper Combat, using his writing to fight against the oppressors. After the war, he continued to use his pen to fight for justice and freedom of expression, speaking out against colonialism, war, and totalitarian regimes. His novels also explored the themes he had developed in his philosophical essays. In The Stranger, for example, Camus tells the story of a man who is alienated from the world around him and ultimately commits an act of violence without any sense of remorse. The novel explores the indifference of the universe and the meaninglessness of human existence, as well as the consequences of such a worldview. Another novel, The Plague, which depicts the struggle of a group of people in a small town as they try to survive an epidemic, can be seen as an allegory for the human condition. The characters in the novel are beset by fear, despair, and death, but they ultimately persevere. Camus saw this as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and its ability to endure even in the face of overwhelming adversity. In 1957, at just 44, Camus was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for illuminating the problems of the human conscience in our time. Sadly, Camus's life was cut short. Just 3 years later, he was killed in a car accident in France at the age of only 46. But his words continued to resonate with readers today. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me lay an invincible summer. This is Albert Camus. Albert Camus was born in 1913 in Mondovi, a small town in French Algeria. His father died in World War I when Albert was just a baby, and his mother raised him in poverty. She could not read or write. Life was hard but not unbearable. He had his health, his friends, and his studies. Though when Albert was 18, tuberculosis struck, killing his father, his grandfather, and several others in his family. It would also nearly take Albert's life and scar him physically and emotionally for the rest of his days. In spite of the disease, Albert finished high school as the top of his class and earned a scholarship to study philosophy at the University of Algiers. There he read the works of Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and became convinced there were answers to the great questions of existence. But as he dug deeper, he found the answers were never straightforward. Albert came to believe that the universe did not provide these answers, and instead was indifferent to humanity's search for meaning. This paradox became the defining feature of Albert Camus's philosophy and his life. He called this paradox the absurd. It is the inherent tension between our desire for meaning and the universe's apparent silence. Albert argued that we experience this tension in every aspect of life, from our relationships to our work to our understanding of the natural world. But rather than despair, Albert insisted that we must accept this tension and live fully. We must realize that we are free to make choices and create meaning in an absurd world. This philosophy deeply impacted Albert's life and work. At 24, he wrote an essay called The Myth of Sisyphus, which explores the idea of living with the absurd. The myth of Sisyphus comes from Greek mythology. It tells the story of a king who offended the gods and was condemned to spend eternity pushing a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll down every time it neared the top. For Camus, Sisyphus represented the human condition. Like Sisyphus, we spend our lives pursuing goals and meaning, only to be met with obstacles and disappointments. But Camus challenged his readers to imagine Sisyphus happy. Despite his futile task, Sisyphus can find joy in the struggle, Camus argued. By embracing the absurdity of our existence and finding joy in the struggle, we can live authentically and create our own meaning. As a young man, Albert witnessed the absurdity of war firsthand. During World War II, he joined the French resistance and helped smuggle people out of German-occupied France. He also became the editor of an underground newspaper called Combat, where he wrote about the need to resist tyranny and uphold human dignity in the face of oppression. Albert used his writing as a weapon against the Nazis, and when they finally retreated, he continued to use his pen to fight for social justice and equality. Through his novels, he explored themes of alienation, the indifference of the world, and the search for meaning. One of his most famous novels is The Stranger, which tells the story of a man who commits a murder in Algeria. The novel is notable for its detached narrative style and its exploration of the absurdity of human existence. Another of his famous novels is The Plague, which depicts the struggle of a group of people in a small town as they fight against a deadly epidemic. The novel is a powerful meditation on the nature of suffering and the importance of solidarity in the face of adversity. Despite his many accomplishments, Albert Camus was a humble man. He believed that everyone had the ability to find meaning in their lives, and that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1957 at the age of 44 for illuminating the problems of the human conscience in our time. Tragically, Albert Camus's life ended abruptly in 1960 when he was killed in a car accident in France at the age of only 46. But his words continue to inspire people around the world. They are a reminder that even in a world that often seems senseless and chaotic, we all have the power to find meaning and make a difference. As Albert Camus once wrote, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me lay an invincible summer." If you liked this video, please subscribe so you won't miss out on any new videos. Thanks for watching.